Released in Japan and North America on the PlayStation 3 and Nintendo Wii in 2011, with the European and Australian release for the PlayStation 3 only in 2012, we have Rune Factory Tides of Destiny, also known as Rune Factory Oceans outside of North America, and the version of the game I'll be covering is the PlayStation 3 version. Developed by Neverland, who unfortunately filed for bankruptcy in 2013, and published by Marvelous Entertainment in Japan, Natsume in North America, and Rising Star Games in Europe, Rune Factory Tides of Destiny is a part of the Rune Factory series, which in turn is a spin-off of the Harvest Moon series, with the Rune Factory games up until the fourth game having the title of A Fantasy Harvest Moon. Rune Factory Frontier on the Wii is also an exception to this rule. This title marks the first, and at the time of this review, only game in the Rune Factory series to be available outside of a Nintendo platform. In this game you control a young man named Aden, you can choose to rename him if you want, who lives on Fenith Island with his childhood friend Sonia, whom you can also rename. After encountering a mysterious light, they wake up to find not only the Fenith Island that they're on being very different from the one that they know, but that Sonia is now sharing Aden's body. After being found by a young woman named Odette who proceeds to show them around as well as provide accommodation for Aden and Sonia, their adventures to find out what's going on begins. The game is very much like Harvest Moon, where you can grow and harvest crops, as well as befriend and possibly romance some of the island's inhabitants, but with Rune Factory, the game adds in monster taming and action RPG elements. But does that make the game any good? Find out in The Good. I quite like the game's variety of characters, even more so than a lot of the Harvest Moon games I've played, and getting to know them better over the course of the game was one of the reasons I sank over 90 hours into it for this review. Each character has their own personality quirks, as well as faults, and as you grow closer to them, you'll learn a little bit more about that character, how they interact with other characters, and how they overcome their problems. I even changed my opinion on a couple of the characters after getting to know them a little better and finding out some more about them. Each character also has things they like and dislike, and if you happen to find an item they really like, you can raise their friendship levels even quicker. You can also raise the levels from simply talking to them each day, fulfilling requests that they post on the message board at the inn, and participating and winning festivals throughout the year. As you get to know the characters better, after a certain point you can visit them in their homes or shops outside of regular hours by knocking on the door. The game places a heavy emphasis on friendships, and one of the key requirements to completing the story requires you to be at a certain friendship level with the 12 potential marriage candidates, Aden getting 9 bachelorettes to choose from if you choose to continue playing as him, or Sonia getting 3 bachelors if you choose to continue playing as her. Tides of Destiny also introduces the concept of dating your love interest prior to marrying them, predating Harvest Moon, A New Beginning on the 3DS by a year. Another interesting touch I enjoyed about the game was that the characters can also show concern for you if you haven't talked to them in a while, or even if you're passing them on the island. They can even wish you a good morning, hello, or good evening depending on the time of day. There's even care taken to change the tone of their greetings as you get to know them a little bit better. Voice direction and voice acting for this game was handled very well, and I thought the English casting certainly fitted the characters. And from someone who prefers Japanese voices over an English dub, it's rare that I'd be content with English voice acting. How I love the fact that if you give certain characters accessories, they'll even go to the trouble of wearing them for you, even during cutscenes. The game also references earlier Rune Factory games with characters from Rune Factory Frontier, and by extension one being from Rune Factory on the DS making a cameo appearance, as well as changing the music to ones used in Rune Factory Frontier. To add to things, the game seems to employ a simple economy system. The inn, general store, blacksmith and clinic all hold discount days throughout the season, and you can even find out if there's demand for a particular item, meaning that you can sell them for more or less than their usual price. A lot of care was taken with this game, and even little things like that really impressed me. The game has many skills for Aden and Sonia to master, from simple things like walking and jumping, to weapon skills and wandering the high seas. Just about anything you do in the game is a skill that can be increased. Tasks such as cooking, crafting and forging are skill based and can only be increased through repetition. The game also tries to make sure that you don't get strong gear or good food early by limiting how complicated the item you're trying to make is, so if your level in that skill isn't high enough, you'll be unable to cook or create the item. The best workaround for this is to simply recreate various fishing rods and cheap accessories to raise your forging and crafting levels, as well as buying cheap ingredients to raise your cooking level, and then selling your completed products to turn a profit and repeat. The cooking skill will be an absolute godsend once you enter the cooking contest later in the game. Fishing is also skill based instead of luck based, with a bar appearing when you have something on the hook. Depending on where you stop the line on the bar will determine whether the fish gets away, catch a regular sized fish, or a large fish. Regardless of the activity, they also cost RP or rune points to perform, and once you run out of RP, it will start draining your HP. Thankfully, cooking, crafting, mixing and forging will stop you if you're at the point of collapse, but you'll need to be especially careful with activities like fishing, farming or fighting. Thankfully, if your skill goes up, you'll gain some RP back, and leveling up in the game will refill your HP and RP bars. Exploration is another thing I really liked about this game. Early on, Aden and Sonia will obtain a golem, which you can name, who will act as your main form of transportation on the high seas. The main story has you going to 4 different shrines, each represented by the elements earth, fire, water and wind. In between that, your golem will also be lifting up sunken islands, sunken shipwrecks, giant stone heads and ruins for you to explore. Some of the things it will lift up can be islands that stay on the surface, but a majority of them will only be temporary, as the golem will throw them back in the ocean when you're done with the place. 4 islands that you'll come across are season themed, and on 3 of them you can grow crops, while the remaining one is used for growing minerals and ore. In order to make the islands functional, you're required to revitalise them by gathering spirits, which can be found on your travels. To make things a little easier, you can set waypoints in which your golem will travel to speed things up, which is great if you want to kill time, or if you need to get to certain parts of the map. And early on, providing you've got the money, you can also request the Guardian Dragon of Fenith Island to carry your golem to certain places on the map, although you will lose that convenience later in the game due to plot reasons. The combat in the game I thought was handled well. Throughout the game you'll have a number of different types of weapons at your disposal, each with their advantages and disadvantages, and as your skills on those weapons grow, you'll also gain access to their special moves. You can also purchase rune abilities from Joe, which are unique attacks or buffs to your weapons, which can be chained with regular attacks to create devastating combos. To gain better weapons, you can make or improve them at the blacksmith's forge, or at your own when you purchase it. Your golem even engages in combat too. Sometimes when you're out on the sea, you might come across a giant monster which your golem can engage in combat with, complete with finishing moves and the ability to block, which is interestingly enough absent when fighting as Aden or Sonia. If you happen to be in a bad spot, or if you need to leave, you can also access a return spell which can take you back to the entrance of an area or back home, which is an absolute godsend, but unfortunately not available while fighting as your golem until you either beat the monster or run away far enough from it. Monsters aren't killed in the game. Instead, your weapons are enchanted with a spell that will send the monster's soul back to the forest of beginnings, known as the First Forest in other games. Defeating a monster isn't the only option either. You can also tame monsters using the brush to aid you in battle, help you with your farming jobs, or to collect produce from. However, taming a monster isn't always easy, and they'll continue to attack you while you're trying to tame them, with stronger monsters requiring more time to tame and at the greater risk of defeating you. But as good as things are, the game isn't perfect, so with that we'll move on to the bad. I feel that the game is a little too combat and story orientated, and the farming aspect of the game takes a back seat. How farming works in the game is that your character receives a spirit wand which can be used on planting spots throughout the seasonal islands. As you restore the island, you gain more planting spots. Once you make some seedlings or rocks out of the spots, there's no need to water them. To make them grow, you'll need to tame monsters that you can assign to each island. Monsters each have different tasks, from growing crops, trees or ore, harvesting crops, or providing you with items. The annoying thing about this is that what you'll grow on those islands are left entirely up to luck. The monsters that can grow crops or ore can only produce certain types, and as they become friendlier with you, there's a better chance of getting giant crops or growing one of the 2 to 4 crops or ore they have access to. So once you get the monsters you need, you can pretty much leave them to their own devices, checking in only to collect harvested crops and making more planting spots. Monsters won't work for free, so you'll need to feed them monster cookies so that they'll work for you. Thankfully, they're really cheap and you can buy them in bulk from the general store. I just feel that farming isn't really an important element to the game, and I'm not keen on leaving the type of crops I use for ingredients or to sell entirely up to luck. Some of the requests that the folks on the island put up I feel can be lacking in variety or difficulty. I've had requests where I've needed to deliver goods from one person to another, which is fine and all, but sometimes the person I need to deliver goods to just happens to only be a few meters away. Other times I can only deliver the item to the character when they're in a certain place. For example, I can only give this rice to Odette to complete this request while she's working at the inn. Requests can also be purposefully cancelled so that you can stock up on food or crafting items with no consequences. The game also features repeating quests, mainly in the form of defeating certain monsters. Unfortunately, the monsters tend to be on opposite ends of the map, and after a certain point in the story, you're unable to fast travel, so you can spend an entire day just simply travelling to the location you need to go to just so you can beat the monsters. I think that for the repeating requests they should have had more delivery requests or even mini-games to break the monotony. Each character will also give you a request for each friendship level you achieve with them, and thankfully completing requests will not only reward you with money or items, but will also increase your friendship with the person in question. The only other gripe I had was completing requests for Jocelyn. Jocelyn is a character who doesn't live on Fenith Island, instead she only comes to the island on Thursdays and holidays, limiting you to when you can see her. You can only take one request at a time, and you can't complete or accept requests on festival days. One of Jocelyn's requests I also found somewhat misleading, as the item she requests from you is a lamp. The thing is that there are several lamps that you can make, but you'll only accept 2 of them, and if you give her the wrong lamp, you just gave away an item that you could have potentially sold or gifted to someone else. This also makes Jocelyn a difficult person to raise friendship levels for because of her schedule. Ranting aside, I think that's all I've got to complain about, so it's now time I give the opinion. Rune Factory Tides of Destiny is one of the best games in the entire Harvest Moon / Story of Seasons series that I've played, and it's a spin-off of the series. I found some people have been divided on the game due to how it handles the farming aspect in favour of combat and story, and I can certainly understand the frustration, as while combat and story has been important in other Rune Factory games, the farming elements from Harvest Moon were always there. Farming aside, I personally think the game is an improvement to Rune Factory Frontier, and if you're a fan of the Harvest Moon / Story of Seasons games, or if you're really big into Rune Factory, this game is definitely a game to play. Now at the time of this review, I've yet to play Rune Factory 4 on the Nintendo 3DS, so rest assured I'll be tackling that sometime in the future. I've also had people ask me to cover Harvest Moon Animal Parade on the Nintendo Wii as well, so that's also on my list of things to do. But as much as I love Tides of Destiny, it doesn't quite dethrone Friends of Mineral Town as my favourite game in the Harvest Moon / Story of Seasons franchise. But I can now say that Harvest Moon GBC3 has been replaced. It's such a shame Neverland's gone, as I would like to have seen another Rune Factory game to play after I complete Rune Factory 4. So with that, it's time for my rating. I would give Rune Factory Tides of Destiny a giant turnip out of 10. A shame you can't get giant gold turnips, eh? I would have given it that instead. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next Infinite Backlog review. If you enjoyed today's review, feel free to check out some of our other videos and subscribe for more. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram and our Facebook page. Once again, thank you for watching.